Good morning, everyone. Happy Monday, and thanks for joining us at this webinar. Webinar about capital markets groups, with one group, of course, joining us for that conversation today. I'm Gwen, Preston of Resource Maven, and I'm joined today by 4 of the companies in the Inventa Capital group, as well as the co-founder of that group, Craig Perry. So I'm going to start with just a little talk about what on earth a capital markets group even is, so we can set the stage a bit, and then I can chat with Craig and Mike Connard, who together formed Inventa, about how Inventa fits into that description. And then each of these companies that basically were born out of the Inventa house can run through their stories and let us know what's coming up next for each of them. During the whole conversation, certainly, if you have any questions, please ask them. Use the ask question thing there, and please send your questions over, and I'll see them, and I will pass them along at the end. We'll have a question and answer period. So what on earth is a capital markets group? Well, it's sort of the quick summary is it takes a team to do the things that are needed to set junior companies in our mining, exploration and mining space up for success. And it takes a team because this stuff is hard. So you need a bullish market. You can't control that. That happens when it happens. And as an investor, you need to be able to, select stocks appropriately. You probably also need some luck because that definitely plays a role here. But on top of all of that, you need to layer in a whole bunch of knowledge, right? You need to know macroeconomics. You need to have at least some grasp of geology or have some good friends who can explain that stuff to you. You need to understand the really significant role that capital markets actions have on any individual stock. So corporate structure, how capital is raised, who's supporting the stock, what forces are in play. There's all kinds of questions around jurisdiction. There's all kinds of questions around the people that are involved. This is how we see it as investors. It's a really hard space. The thing is, it is just as hard, if not harder, for the folks who are sitting on the other side, who are trying to create and run these companies. When markets are good, it's really hard to find good people. I mean, I have this conversation on a daily basis now with companies who are trying to find people, whether it's geologists, whether it's legal support, corporate secretaries, accountings, marketing. It's very hard to find good people. They've all found their positions already. It's certainly hard to find good projects, especially projects for which you pay a reasonable price. If you do, as an individual or as a private company, you find a good project, it's hard to find a clean shell, which is a trading company that doesn't really have anything in it, to take that project public. And it's hard to raise sticky money. I mean, that's true no matter what the market situation is, but sticky money is money that invests in you for the longer term, not for any kind of quick flip. These things are hard when markets are good. And of course, when markets are bad, let's layer on a few more things. It's hard to hold on to good assets because it's always hard to raise any money, and it's hard to keep your costs down. So the little bits of money that you do have can go in to holding on to those assets. So one way of addressing these challenges is by working together as a team, right? That's really what a capital markets group is. A capital markets group is an entity that pools the knowledge, the projects, the networks, the ideas and connections, the access to capital, and the experiences of a group of market professionals. One of the things that I actually love about mining is that nobody in mining knows everything, not by any stretch. So you have really good mining engineers, you have fantastic geologists, you have capital markets entrepreneurs who can have conversations with me where I only understand half of what they're saying. You have communications people. There's a huge number of roles that need to be filled in this space. And we all maybe come in with one set of skills, but we have to learn all of the other ones. And so that's part of that. That's another way of explaining a capital markets group. To make it in junior mining requires a lot of different abilities. Everyone has strengths, but it takes a team to account for all of those needs. And so the best teams check the boxes, right? They have strong technical abilities. They have global reach around geologic knowledge, around different jurisdictions and how they work or don't work. And they have investing networks all around the world. You know, they have networks of interested investors in Europe and in Asia and in South America and in North America. And they have deep capital markets experience. This is important. Like I say, capital markets have a very significant impact on how a share actually on how a stock actually performs. So they need to have deep capital market experience through the good, the bad, the ugly, the fantastic. All of these are learning experiences, and good groups have seen a lot and so can repeat the good and avoid the bad. If a good group of people with all of those things can come together and work together, then what they often end up with is they become an entity. And so people who have maybe a good project and want it to be put into a good company that has a good chance of success will approach that capital markets group and say, here's a project, what can we do to help this project succeed? Or a good person who wants to find a good job, maybe a good geologist, a good mining engineer might approach the group and say, I like what you guys are doing. And so that gives the group access to good people. These things, a good capital markets group will pull money and people and expertise towards it, more than you could possibly put in one single company. And so multiple companies are the result. You have good projects that come in. If it's a project that's worthy of a company all on its own, then that's what they create. If it's a project that should be married with another project, maybe that's what happens. If a person needs a place to exist, there's probably a home for them within the stable. And so the result after a capital markets group gets some momentum and has been around for a while is probably a host of well-structured companies, probably or ideally with sticky shareholders and some good market support, all of which have access to capital, all of which are working good projects. They're supported by good, deep, relevant technical expertise. Because they work together and they have the experiences, there's a lot of well-oiled marketing machinery there. So I'm not trying to say pumping, but you need to tell your story in order for people to buy your stock. And if you have a bunch of people with experience telling stories, they know they can reach better audiences and they can use better avenues to get to them. So that's what I mean by a good marketing machine. You have efficient offices. You can share corporate secretary services and legal services and just physical space. And you probably have overlapping shareholder groups, which leverages success from one group into another group, perhaps one that's done well into one that's just being born. And speaking of just being born, you probably have interest from shareholders in new deals, even as they go out the gate, which increases the odds and the speed of success because they can access more capital sooner. Now, I've been very positive in all of these comments so far. I should note that there are, you know, as with junior mining companies, there is, of course, a spectrum of capital markets groups out there. There are some really fantastic ones, and there are some that are arguably not so fantastic. So don't assume that just because it comes from a capital markets group, that means it's good. But if it does come from a capital markets group, take a look at the other companies and do a little digging and see if it feels like this is a group that is setting companies up for success. Now, I've put a few examples here. Certainly, we have the Inventa team with us here today, and they have become in this bull market a standout example of capital markets efficiency and power. The Discovery Group is a more long-standing example of the same thing, and we know there's lots of good companies that have come out of that stable and continue to today. Pathway Capital, sort of associated with Sandstorm. There's good companies that come out of there. There's a whole group that doesn't really have a name, but it's had K&T and Newfound Gold and Tourmalina, and there's a bunch that have come out of there. There are some very solid groups out there. And so what's the bottom line? It isn't that a company needs to come out of a capital markets group, but it is that a good capital markets group increases the odds of success because of all of the things that I've just outlined, all of the things that group will give a company right out the gate and through its exploration or whatever trajectory it goes along, it will have support from this group. And so this just sets me up for those last three words there, which is one of the really important things that you do as a junior mining investor is that you follow the people, right? And so the people in a good capital markets group, they are who you are really following, as opposed to trying to identify individual stocks on their own. You're really just following the people and seeing what the next thing is that they do. So that's my spiel on what a capital markets group is. Since we have Craig and Mike with us here today, let's have a little chat about that. So Craig, you and Mike founded Inventa, I actually don't know, it's 5 or 6 years ago, something like that. Do you want to talk about what led you to that point, sort of where you both had come from and why you decided to do it?
Sure, Gwen. Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for that introduction. I think that was excellent, you know, and the focus on the people is so very, very critical. If you look at, you know, the most successful resource investors, private resource investors of our time, you know, Eric Sprott, Ross Beatty, their investment thesis is largely built around backing the right people, particularly at the early stages of the cycle. So it's all important. In terms of people and background for us, you know, I'm an exploration geologist. I spent 8 years with Rio Tinto before joining Owen Hegarty and starting the Tigers Realm group of companies. You know, some of our sort of wins there, if you like, were Next Gen Energy, of course. ISO Energy came out of Next Gen. We had a number of successes on that front. Mike and I came across each other 5 years ago. We started a cobalt business together, which, you know, within about 12 months of starting that business, I think it was one of the few successful exits during that last cobalt boom. We put $200,000 to work in that company and sold it for $15 million 12 months later. And Mike and I have been locked at the hip ever since. You know, Mike's a brilliant emerging mining entrepreneur and mining magnate the way Wiesler is going at the moment. And we've just been, you know, continuing some of the stuff I was doing at Tigers Realm and utilizing some of Mike's ideas. Mike's a sort of, you know, very good day-to-day manager of a company, but also a great analyst of the macro picture and seeing what's coming up. So, you know, what we wanted to do was put our foot on quality projects. We've got a very specific set of requirements around projects as well, and then put them together with people that we know would be successful. So, you know, here on the call today, we've got Chris Donaldson at Outback Goldfields. Chris and I have known each other for a long time. You know, Chris's first hit out as a CEO, and he's doing a spectacular job. Cam Timstra there as well, and Leif Nilsson at Surge Copper. You know, all hungry young people that have tremendous track records in what they were doing previously, and now brought it over to the Inventa group and what we're doing here. You know, I suppose since we last caught up with you, Gwen, this time last year, things have really sort of moved on for us. We're kicking some goals on all fronts, but our group and group companies over the past 12 months have raised over $220 million in capital. We just financed Wiesler and raised $74 million there. So it's sort of ticking off all of the boxes that you talk about there. You know, you need quality projects, people that know what they're doing with a track record of success, and that access to capital is all important, of course, and that's something that we're, you know, we're being successful in at the moment. All of our companies are well funded, given the amount of capital that we've raised in recent times.
Yeah, for sure. One thing that you say there about how it's sort of, I mean, you've raised a huge amount of capital and the companies are starting to check off boxes. Absolutely. That I was going to ask next, and Mike, maybe you can answer this, how things have changed as you run Inventa, as you lead Inventa. I mean, when you started this 5 years ago, we were in a pretty crappy market, and like you were doing cobalt because like it was interesting, but while everything else was pretty boring. And now we're in a very different market. And maybe in there, I'll also throw the question. I know you and I have at times chatted about, you know, people bring you projects, and that's certainly earlier in the lifespan of Inventa. That was a big thing. People would bring you projects, and that could perhaps have born a company here or given, you know, created a company there. What is it that really happens with Inventa now? How has that changed?
Well, I think, you know, what's changed for us has been, you know, movement from formation and origination of companies to kind of building out the teams and helping our group companies kind of achieve their goals. So, you know, now the focus, you know, with Wiesler, of course, is we've got 8 rigs going to 10. I've got hundreds of people on the ground in Mexico. Cameron's doing a spectacular job with Tarachi, and we're actually going to be pouring gold or creating producing company here in the near term with Tarachi. And so the the focus on people and kind of growing the approach from actually just structuring and financing deals to moving towards production in a couple of our companies is a new challenge, and it's one that we're well prepared for. We have connections with, in our opinion, the best mine builders, which is Ausenco Engineering, and so with that we're able to kind of access new and cutting edge ideas for these challenges. Looking at challenges and then new ways always been a key tenet of Inventa as well too. So with Serge and Leif's company, looking at carbon neutral copper is a new and exciting way of kind of looking at things. So stepping back from actually originating these deals and then moving into kind of managing and building teams and solving these challenges that we've kind of approached through the group has been a kind of a new take on that. And again, it's you're right, it's gone more from kind of having to look for projects and ideas to maybe spending time more kind of weeding through opportunities and finding the ones that we think will be the most impactful. And it's one of the interesting things that I've noticed over the life of capital markets groups or mining groups is that the projects tend to get better and the opportunities tend to get bigger over time. And I think that's a function of having the team and then also having the infrastructure to kind of take on some of the best ideas and that therefore kind of creating the bigger returns for the people that follow these groups over time.
Yeah. So then, I mean, I'm just curious at this stage in the market, are you still being shown new projects? This is more just me being curious about sort of a test of the waters here. How often do new projects still come in for you to look at?
This is one of the sort of key things about having good people. I suppose, in the past 12 months, we'll have seen well over 1,000 projects presented to us. And of course, we're generating our own projects and ideas all the time. So you must have a very, very good technical and geological team to act as a fast filter to get through those. You can't waste all your time on these sorts of submittals. So being able to process those opportunities, assess them quickly, and drill or kill them is so crucial. So you must have a very, very good technical team, which we do. Charles Funk is one of our partners, and has a brilliant team that can very quickly process that sort of information as it comes in. But certainly we're seeing, and Mike's hinted at it there, I suppose, as our group, we are the new kids on the sort of mining group block, if you like. But we're off to a very fast start here with the quality companies we've got and the money that we've raised. We're seeing more and more opportunities come towards us all the time. And of course, the scale of those opportunities is growing. I suppose if we go back 3 years, we were only looking at fairly early stage exploration projects, things that weren't really in our wheelhouse to an extent, some things that we would see, like our Panuco project, Vizsla's Panuco project in Mexico, right in our wheelhouse. The type of project we are looking for is something where the discovery's been made and the value hasn't been recognised from the project. So we've started to sort of go from the exploration side of the spectrum to more advanced stage projects. And now, that we've grown in stature to some extent, we're now looking at larger acquisitions and operating type projects, acquisitions up to $500 million plus. So you slowly grow that roster of opportunities, if you like, and working through those is so critical. So having that critical mass, having those technically brilliant people who can raise capital and promote a story as well is so very, very critical.
Okay, then last question for you two before we go on to the companies. You look at bigger opportunities. There's 1,000 projects in the last year that you've probably parsed through to see if there was something there you wanted to work on. There's now, I don't even want to put a number on it, 5, 6 companies in the stable. So Mike, Are there more companies coming? I mean, is this going to keep growing? How much is too much for the group to be able to manage? I'm not trying to put you on the spot. It's more, we're going to follow the people. Are there going to be more stories to attack or to follow? And yeah, how do you manage just the increasing workload of helping all of those companies?
Well, that's always a challenge, and that's a question that we get with Beazle all the time as well. How do you handle kind of expanding so quickly there? And I think it all has to come down to the team. As you said, follow the people, but it all has to do with the team and the people that we have here in the company. And so there are potential opportunities that have come our way and that we look to kind of progress or get involved with. But it has to have the fundamental piece of that is it has to have the right team and group in place, or the right people that we can go and bring in and leverage to create a better outcome for the project than it already has. So we're never looking to overwhelm ourselves or take on too much and suffer with quality in that. Rather, we have to have the team and the people to make these opportunities work. And if they don't, then we unfortunately have to pass on those opportunities. But yes, there probably will be one or two more deals coming. One of which is one that we've been working on since 2017. We were pioneers in the tin space. So we have a tin company that was called Tin One that we incorporated, I think, in 2017. That's finally going through the listing process, so that'll come out shortly. So there's opportunities like that have been long-lived, that have their own freestanding team, and they're ones that are kind of coming out after being with the regulators and the exchange for some time.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks. I think that sets the stage. Now I'm going to let each of these CEOs run through their company, and of course, I'll ask each to sort of start with just the genesis story, since that's the connection here. So Chris Donaldson, why don't we start with Outback Goldfields? I always want to put the plural on a different word of that name, but anyways, Outback Goldfields. Why don't you take the stage here?
Okay, thanks for the intro there, Gwen, and I think you nailed it on the head. So Outback Goldfields is a relatively new company. I think we're probably the earliest stage in the stable of companies that we have here. Hang on 2 seconds, I can't see my screen. There we go. Yeah, I think we're the earliest stage, and we were able to acquire these properties. So we have 4 early stage exploration properties in and around the Fosterville mine in Victoria, Australia, which is one of the most exciting geological districts going right now. And we were able to get these properties really because of the relationship that Craig had with a public company out of Australia called Petrotherm that had the foresight to acquire these about 5 years ago. But they wanted, and they weren't really getting the love in the market in Australia. So they wanted a couple things. One, they wanted it listed on a North American or a Canadian vehicle, and second, they wanted Craig and a team to run these properties. So I came on in October. Came over from Western Copper and Gold, and we immediately raised $11 million. We had great success on that. We were going out for about $6 million, and we're able to raise 11. We've just started our maiden exploration program, and now are hitting on 3 out of the 4 properties we're rolling pretty hard on right now. So we do trade on the Canadian Stock Exchange under the symbol OZ. We have an OTC listing as well, which you see here on the screen. So as mentioned, we have four properties in the Victorian Goldfields, and now this district is known as a really prolific past producing area. They've mined over 80 million ounces to date, and there's a second gold rush that's going on there, and that started about 5-6 years ago when Kirkland Lake and the Fosterville mine, they hit an incredible zone called the Swan Zone, and are mining now at about 50 gram per ton. So it has made them the lowest cost and highest margin mine in the world. And everybody's looking to try to find the next Fosterville style deposit. A little bit about Oz, we have a good board that I'll go through here, and certainly for this stage of a company, We've got people on the board who have experience in kind of all aspects of the mining segment there, and producer, explorer, and so forth. And we're following a path of previous success. So both within, you know, everybody's collective experience, but also there's been some companies that have, you know, in the last year or two have had quite a bit of success as well. So we're borrowing from their game plan as well. And our entry point at this point is pretty good. We're just below our financing cost. So most of the investors are in at around the price we're at right now. I think we're about 50 cents. Our financing was at 60 cents. And the good news is, you know, we have enough money to have a pretty broad program for the next 12 months. And we've only released 3 holes, and so we should have quite a significant and steady stream of catalysts and news flow coming up ahead. So a little bit about the board. Craig, you know, obviously a lot of success with Visa and Skeena Resources and so forth, but the rest of the board quite experienced as well. Oda Halley, our CFO, was formerly with Yamana and Endeavour Mining, Pan American Silver. Louis Archambault, many of you may know from his days as head of corporate development for Gold Corp, and right now he's building a mine with Orezone in Africa. As mentioned, I came over from Western Copper and Gold, which developing a big, large copper gold porphyry up in the Yukon. Happy to have Penny Jaski on the ground in Australia. She was 15 years with community relations with Rio Tinto, and Craig was able to bring her on board to make sure we're doing everything properly in Australia. And Eric Zonshur, well-known analyst, and most recently he was with Canaccord, also a geologist to round out the team. So a little bit of our structure, we've got about 60 million shares out. Our share price has gone up here, you know, since the beginning of the month. As mentioned, I think we're a little over 50 cents. Our market cap's about 30 million, and we've got about just under 8 million in the bank here. So we're well funded for the balance of the year and our exploration programs. So I was talking a little bit about Victoria, and I mentioned the 80 million ounces that they produced. Most of that was from 1850 to 1920, and at that period of time, there's a gold rush that went on, made Victoria the wealthiest country in the world, and they were mining this, you know, big nuggety gold at or near surface. And then that kind of ended about 1920 when a lot of people just thought it was mined out because they were hitting cover, in which case it was generally a basalt cover, or they were hitting the water table. And then for almost 100 years, there was not really a lot of good stories coming out of the region. That all changed, as I mentioned, with Fosterville in 2016. And now there's a modern day staking rush that's going on as people are drilling below cover and looking to find the source for that alluvial gold. And the prize is big, as mentioned, it's 50 gram per ton. And so that's about as good as it gets in our industry here. The knock on the area has been, you know, Fosterville is fantastic, but are there other deposits like that? And we're starting to see some signs that there are. A couple other companies have had some great hits recently that I'll get into, which is really putting the focus back on the region, and which is encouraging for everybody. So we have 4 properties, and you see them in orange there. I'll start at the bottom. That's Glenfine. Glenfine is the most advanced one we had. We started drilling on that. We've got about a 4,000 meter program planned. We're about halfway through that. We've also launched on Ballarat West, and Ballarat West is pretty indicative of what's happening in the region. So despite the fact that within, say, 5 kilometers or 3 miles, there's been over 17 million ounces produced, Ballarat West is essentially undiscovered and certainly underexplored. And the reason for that, it's subject to shallow cover. So we've launched a program on that, starting to do some sampling, and anxious to get on and eventually do some drilling on that later this summer. Ewangroon up in the north, we've got a program on that going now. We've done our mag survey. We've done a LiDAR survey, which gives us an idea of the historical workings. And we're really, we're launching a RAB program, which will identify some targets here in the next couple of weeks. And the last one we have is Silver Spoon. I know this is one that's probably the flashiest in terms of the location. The blue you see on the map there, that's Fosterville and Kirkland Lake. So we touched them on one side, and then we're sandwiched between Newmont and in the pink on the other side. And what's interesting is that area that's shaded in red, and that's an area that the Victorian government has put up for auction. And it's actually 4 parcels of land, and the rumor is it's going to be about a $50 million earn-in required to get the rights to mine on that property there. So that should be a mid-tier or major, and we'll find out who that is, and that should set the value for land in the area as well. So you see Fosterville just up north of our Silver Spoon. That's about 10 kilometers away, and just south is Costerfield Mine, and that's Mandalay Resources. I'll talk about them in a bit, but they've just had a phenomenal hit of almost a meter at 450 grams per ton. So we're certainly the right area code right now for any kind of discovery. So I mentioned before, the knock was that there's only one Fosterville, but there's tremendous exploration that's going on there right now. Kirkland Lake, while they have that great zone, they're running out of it. So they've committed to $90 million worth of exploration this year. If you add up all of the companies like ourselves and include Kirkland Lake, there's over 200 million coming into the, 200 million worth of exploration this year. So while it's nice, and obviously we hope we're the ones who make the next discovery, the reality is that if anybody makes a discovery, all boats float. So a little bit about the Glenfine property. We have 2 targets there. We've just finished up 2,000 meters in and around Glenfine, which is common in the area here is that we're drilling in and around a historic mine. For us, it was the Glenfine South mine, which had previously mined 40,000 ounces at 16 gram per ton. So we've had some pretty good hits. We had three drill holes come back, and we're definitely on target and have some results that you see on the right there. We're waiting for the balance of those results, which we should get in the next few weeks. We've moved the 2 drills that we have on that property, an RC drill and a diamond drill, up to British Banner, and we'll be starting on that in a couple of weeks. So our other property is Ewan Groon, and you can almost divide this one into 2. On the left side there, on the left of the Avoca Fault, we're centered around a historic mine called the Golden Jacket Mine, ultra high grade, 250 gram per ton, albeit only 1,400 ounces, and then they hit covers. So we've done the geophysics and we've done the LiDAR survey, and now we're planning in the next week or 2 to do a RAB program, which would be about a grid of 300 holes, looking for some gold tracers. In this case, it's some arsenic, high levels of arsenic. The goal of that is to really for some target identification. So happy to get on that. The second part of it is in and around Wedderburn, and that has actually had quite a bit of historical drilling that you see there. We've already identified 6 high tenor arsenic anomalies in there. One is over 3,000 ppms, which is highly anomalous. Anything over about 100 is considered anomalous there. So we're working on land access, and hopefully we'll get on that within a month or 2 this summer. So Ballarat West, I talked about that. This is the one with 17 million ounces in and around the area, yet the property is virtually unexplored. And if you look to the south of it, you see these historical workings, and it looks like it almost just stops right at our border there, and it does. But the reason for that is that it dips under cover. So, we suspect that these structures, these north-south structures, go right through the property. So we're currently doing some soil samples and so on, centered around the Grassies and Mitchell's area there, again for target identification, and we'll be drilling on that probably around September. And the last property is a Silver Spoon, and I mentioned it's so proximate to Newmont and Kirkland Lake. It's sandwiched between Fosterville and now this Mandalay Resources, which is that shepherd zone that you see in the bottom. 426 grams at almost a meter, and 6 meters at 23 gram per ton. This has really brought the focus back in the area and really provided a bit of an excitement on that. So you add that up with some other results that happen in the area, and this is a bit of an example of what could potentially happen if you get some good results. So first of all, there's a company called Fosterville South. They IPO'd last year. They got lucky in that the gold hit 2,000 at the time, but and they marketed well and had some good results, and they got up to about a 300 million market cap. Mandalay Resources about a month and a half ago put out their results, and they've doubled. And I think they're about a 350 million market cap. And then most recently is what happened with E79 Resources, and this is about 10 days ago. We IPO'd about or started trading about the same time, and actually they were a lower market cap than we were until about 10 days ago, when they had a phenomenal discovery, 11 meters at 160 gram per ton. They popped well over 250%. And are doing quite well. So that's the upside. Of course, you've got to hit and make some discoveries to get there, but certainly some good leverage if and when you do. So for us, it's early stage. It's higher risk typically with these early stage projects. But if you're into that, it's I think we're in the top jurisdiction we can be in. We're in an area that has produced over 80 million ounces of gold. They believe there's another 80 yet to be produced. Craig, I'm going to steal your mantra here, and he always says, when he's evaluating projects, he looks for what is the size of the prize, what is the cost of the test, and what is the chance of success. And for us, the size of the prize is as good as it gets. Cost of the test, I mean, we're in a great jurisdiction, tier 1 certainly, with a lot of excitement there. And the chance of success, well, I mean, as I mentioned, there's 80 million ounces of that alluvial gold that has been drilled. There's got to be a source for that, and we believe we've got the properties that will be help us make the next Fosterville discovery.
Thanks, Chris. I was just thinking, well, maybe I'll ask a few questions right now while everyone sort of is fresh with your maps and ideas still fresh in their head. What's your favorite target? Haha, you have so many.
Geez. It's like, which is my favorite kid, right? So, I'll say this. I mean, they're all a bit different. I like Ballarat West. It's earlier stage. And we're going to have some, do a little bit more pre-drill work on it. But I think over time it will rise to be our number 1 prospect, and that's simply the fact that there's so much gold in and around the property within 5 kilometers. It's untested, and I think it gives us the best chance of finding a multi-million ounce deposit.
How thick is the cover at Ballarat West? There was a note there that there's like lead mines on the property that are in the cover rock. Did I read that right?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the area, and that's some of the work we're doing right now. But cover generally starts at about 10 meters to 40 meters and can go from 10 to 80 meters deep. So, when we say we're going undercover, it's not, it's not like we're going hundreds of meters down, but generally you can start at about 80 to 100 meters.
Okay. There's some big numbers there, like 90 million bucks from Kirkland on exploration. This land package that's being auctioned. That's a weird one that the government still just held on to that one. Anyways, that's being auctioned and perhaps for $50 million. I say they stood out to me because despite the successes in like E79 and things like that and Mandalay of late, Newfoundland has taken over from Australia as being like the area play that everybody's focused on. Do you still feel a lot of investor excitement about the area? Like, do you think, is it consistent and it's just I am like
Yeah, no, it had a lot of excitement a few years ago, and then people were, where's the discovery? And that's changed here, even in the last few months with the 2 other, with Mandalay and E79 finding some discoveries. Ultimately, the proof has got to be on, you got to hit some discoveries here, right? And we're starting to see that, and that should flush itself out over the next year or so with that much money in going into exploration. Yeah. So I think we'll regain the title from Newfoundland here once we start getting a few more discoveries.
Particularly when we get onto Ballarat West, that is one of the best gold exploration properties left on the planet. There's been 16 million ounces of gold produced within 5 kilometres of that property boundary. On our property, there's been 400,000 ounces produced where there is outcrop. And then the only reason there hasn't been a multi-million ounce discovery there, I think, is because of lack of exploration and that shallow cover. So I can't wait to see us have some rigs out there testing that target. That's the chances of finding a multi-million ounce gold deposit there are as high as I've ever seen anywhere.
That's a statement of conviction from Craig Perry. You all heard it here. All right, let's move on to the copper story. There's only one base metal operator in the stable here. Leif, could you tell us about Surge Copper?
So this is a full version of our presentation, but just given the format of this webinar, I'll probably skip around a bit and spend a bit of time on this page, which I think captures some of the core tenets of what we're doing and what has gotten me so excited about the opportunity. And Gwen, per your introduction, I will, I guess, start over here on the right side of the page, just on the people side of the equation, and I guess the origin story of myself and the connection with the folks at Inventa as it relates to Surge. So I guess to tell that story, so my background, I'm an exploration geophysicist by training many years ago. The majority of my career, though, has been spent in the advisory side of things. So I've been a career mining investment banker for over a dozen years. I worked in a number of different investment banking firms and environments. Started out at CIBC in Toronto. Did a stint with a U.S. firm in London for a few years, and then the last 8 years or so spent with Macquarie Capital here in Toronto. Macquarie being the big Aussie investment bank. Not always a household name in this part of the world, but in the mining industry definitely is one of the sort of leading businesses in that space in terms of M&A advisory and so forth. So in my role there, in my seat as a banker last year, I was spending a bit of time, probably in the kind of early to mid-summer, with a couple relationships of mine, one of which was Craig. And basically it was the sort of germ of an idea that we were sort of toying with around what we're already seeing come to fruition in terms of better copper market environments, and really, I think a unique place that the jurisdiction of BC we believed would hold and serve in the future for a number of reasons, around I guess above ground considerations around ESG type things, but also the changing paradigm around views on the immense prospectivity of some of the porphyry regions and districts in the Northwest Cordillera. And so as part of that dialogue, we happened upon what has ultimately become the opportunity around the Huckleberry District. There's a few pieces to it, and the public company Surge was a key part of that strategy. And so the way it came about was this group made an approach to the company Surge in the latter part of summer of 2020 with a sort of proposal to affect the strategy. There was a great meeting of minds and personalities and culture, if you will. That culminated in what I described as a recapitalization transaction that took place in the fall of last year. So there was about a $6.5 million non-brokered private placement. Two gentlemen came on the board in the aftermath of that, one of whom is Craig. And really the strategy coming out of that was to immediately go and recruit a new CEO, for the reason being that Surge was a public company that was essentially in care and maintenance mode or a period of very limited activity for a number of years. So it was being run in a sort of bare bones manner, keeping everything in good standing, but in terms of really accelerating things and raising additional capital, getting attracting new investor interest, there was definitely I think a unified vision to go out and attract new talent to the business. I immediately put up my hand for that, and as I take you through this, I think you'll understand why I view it as a very unique and attractive opportunity in the copper space at the moment. So I ultimately ended up coming across as the new CEO for the business in January of this year proper. So I've been in the seat for around 6 months so far. In terms of what we're doing and what the strategy is all focused on, again, I think in large part it's covered on what you see here on the page. So we have a very keen focus on this area around the Huckleberry mine in central BC. For those of you who don't know, Huckleberry is one of 7 copper mines in BC. It's currently on care and maintenance. It was put on care and maintenance about 5 years ago due to depressed copper prices. It's owned by a third party called Imperial Metals. That company, I'll touch on them in a moment. They've got a few things going on in their business, but they have made some public disclosure recently that they will be assessing some of the economics of restarting Huckleberry. So they're going to be, updating the life of mine plan and, putting presumably some guidance out to the market on what the economic opportunity is of restarting the mine. So definitely a very interesting part and dynamic of what's going on. That mine has a relatively short reserve life, so it was put on care and maintenance in 2016 with a mine life that was meant to take it to 2021. So part of our strategy here is that we have moved very aggressively to consolidate a land package around the mine, and I'll show you that in some detail on the next page, because we think that both in terms of realizing or leveraging the value of that infrastructure that exists in the district, some of the resources that Surge now controls, will potentially be a kind of obvious and critical part of that future. But beyond that, there is a significant mineral endowment here, and as is a classic tale in many aspects of mining, some of which you just heard in the Outback story, there's large areas of this property that haven't had modern exploration done on it, and given the scale of the endowment we see already, there's a really exciting dimension to what we're doing that is really of the flavor of generative exploration. So we think there's a outstanding potential to make new discoveries in this district. So the area, as I said, central BC, it's excellent infrastructure. There's a lot of forestry activity going on in this part of BC, so it's fairly brownfields in nature. We access our property by way of forest service roads, so these things snake all over our property. Gives us excellent access. You can drive a car right up to site. Because of the presence of that mine, there's a lot of mining-specific infrastructure that has been already put in place, such as a grid power line, the mine service road, and just given where we are in BC, there's a few different port options not too far from here on the west coast that both Huckleberry and other mines have used for exporting concentrates in the past. So absolutely fantastic place to work from an infrastructure perspective. The resource inventory that we are advancing today, it's already quite advanced. So even though I mentioned that the exploration piece is a huge and exciting part of what we're doing, we are not starting from scratch by any means. So it's currently classified under two different properties called Utsa and Berg. And between the two of those, there's about 834 million tons of porphyry copper resources already in the M&I categories. So very significant historical investment in drilling that has really built that resource base. The grades are in the 0.4 to 0.45% range. One of the slides I'll show you gives you a flavor of how to benchmark those types of porphyry grades against what else you see in BC. From our perspective, those are very strong grades from a open pit development perspective in BC. I mentioned the land package and the exploration side of things. So this is a really quite large land package, 122,000 hectares. It's all contiguous. It's been patched together through a few different transactions and direct staking by Surge, and I'll show you the patchwork there in a moment. But as I said, it's large areas of it have never had modern geophysics or modern exploration techniques applied to it. We are getting after that right now in a systematic manner. So we're about 3/4 of the way finished with an airborne geophysical survey that is ideally suited for this type of environment. We're actually doing that in collaboration with our neighbors over at Huckleberry. So the entire district is getting the same data sets collected on it, and we'll be able to compare that against known occurrences and get some very good information on the signatures that some of these known deposits have. This little image here is not part of that survey. This is a ground-based IP data set compilation that pertains to a really small area here around just the 3 deposits at the Utsa property. It's important, and I show it here because this is really what led to the blind discovery of one of the larger ore bodies there at Utsa called West Seal. So there is a bit of soil cover in the southern part of this district, which is both a a challenge but an opportunity in the sense that it sort of obscures color features and alteration anomalies that you'd otherwise be able to see, but it gives rise to the opportunity to make blind discoveries that otherwise may have been done long ago in the past. So West Seal is a great example of this. Surge, through doing some of this ground-based IP geophysics years ago, made a blind discovery of West Seal about 10 years ago, and that's today forms a big part of what we're doing. And again, this is a small corner of the Utsa property. We think there's amazing potential to make additional discoveries in the district. I won't spend too much time in this short talk on the drilling that we're doing, but we have made a pretty substantial investment in the resource-focused drilling at Utsa. Starting in November of last year, with the benefit of that recap financing I mentioned, we kicked off a 20,000 meter program. Just to give you some context, this is the total drilling drill hole database that forms the in the resource area at Utsa. So this includes the 20,000 meters. So we have already increased the size of that database by about a sixth. And we're making a further push this summer to bring that database up to the next level, where we will look to cut off that database and move forward with a new resource update. So if you're not familiar with copper porphyry intervals, I will just tell you that these are very good results. Certainly, in a BC context, but even in a global context, these are very strong results. This chart here, it's a little bit hard to read the numbers. I grabbed this from a third-party public data provider, OPAX, and it basically looks at a data set of global copper exploration results over the course of 2020 on a grade thickness basis. So just somewhat representative. I've plotted a couple of these highlighted intervals on here just to give you a flavor. So most of these intersections that we're pulling out of West Seal will plot in the top quintile, the top decile of global copper exploration results on a grade thickness basis. So we're absolutely thrilled with what we're seeing here, and certainly hope to see more of that with the ongoing drilling around West Seal. Not to mention any of the sort of generative exploration that I will touch on further in a moment. And then I talked a bit about the team, so the genesis story, if you will, and that refresh on both the board and management is something that we expect to continue moving forward. So since I've been in the seat, we have started to recruit some additional professionals to the management team, and we'll look forward to doing that further this year as well. So just very quickly on this page, this is a zoomed in, better image of the property package that I'll touch on. So Surge for a long time owned this blue property to the south here, which is the Utsa property. 3 known porphyries there: East Seal, West Seal, and Ox. And really this consolidation strategy I mentioned at the top was affected starting around December of last year. So after the new team got involved with the company, we moved very quickly to bolt on this black outlined property to the northwest, which we did by way of a 70% earn-in transaction with Centerra. So that came with an advanced resource at the Berg deposit itself. And then there's this quite advanced exploration target called Berget, and you can see some blue lines in the periphery here. There was some gaps in the claim package, so we had to go back and do a couple additional transactions with private vendors to patch that in. And then in addition to that, we've done some direct staking in the periphery here. So this is an accomplishment that the whole team is actually, I think, very proud of. This is something that we threaded the needle on. We know anecdotally that other folks have tried to do these exact transactions in the past. We were able to do it in a window of time that may well have closed if we had not done it. Just given where copper markets have moved to, I think it would be very hard to get this property package assembled today. if not at the sort of valuations and transaction prices that we did so. So we're certainly very happy with this. Big picture from Berg down to the Seal deposits, about a 28-kilometer belt. In that belt, you've got 5 known porphyry deposits. The total scale of the endowment is well over 1.5 billion tons. A couple other drill confirmed targets at Whiting Creek and Burgett, and large swaths of this area, as I mentioned, are remain very underexplored and haven't had modern reconnaissance or exploration techniques applied to them. Just quickly on cap structure. So we today trade with a market cap between around 65 to $7 million. We did just close a bought deal financing a couple of weeks ago, so the cash balance is quite healthy at the moment at just over $15 million. And part of that really was, from my perspective, focus on growing this sort of blue slice of the pie. So the company, before our involvement, had pretty large, albeit supportive, retail and high net worth shareholder base that still remains a big part of it. I've been focused in my efforts in the first 6 months on growing the institutional support base, so seeing some success there. Altius are a big supporter of the group. Centerra own their position by way of the Berg transaction. They remain supportive of what we're doing, and a very big management and sort of 1 degree of separation associates of management support for the company. And obviously these slices of the pie would involve the substantial investment that we've received from the folks at Inventa, which is obviously germane to this discussion. Just quickly on this long-term price chart, so you're looking at about 10 years here. I show this just because I think it's a very helpful window into some of the history. So West Seal, as I mentioned, blind discovery by Surge. Most of the drilling up to this point has happened in this 2-year window from 2012 to 2013. Generated a lot of excitement for good reason at that time. And then I would describe this kind of intervening period as the rug being pulled out. Copper fell to $2 per pound, and there was a sort of long winter of very limited access to capital for these types of companies. And so really not a lot of activity took place across this sector of the mining industry, but certainly this area in particular, including Huckleberry itself going on care and maintenance. And that is the opportunity that the new team is picking up on. So the $6.5 million refi placement I talked about, off to the races with that new 20,000 meter program, consolidated this district, and then we just closed the second round of financing and have a very busy 2 years ahead of us with that runway. Just on some benchmarking, a lot of numbers on this page. I won't go through it in too much detail, but over here on the left side of the page are all of the operating copper mines in BC, and all of the numbers on the right side of the page are the deposits and projects that Surge controls. So there's 3 deposits that comprise the global UTSA number here, and then the same for Berg. And then for reference, I've included some other relevant technical numbers like the overall size of the operation, strip ratio, metallurgical recoveries, etc. So porphyry deposits can be a little confusing. I think everyone looks for the single number that gives you a proxy or a litmus test on margin. It's a bit hard to do that with polymetallic porphyries, where things like recoveries and product payabilities come into the equation. But I think if you sort of look at all of these numbers here in totality, we certainly hold the view that compared to what is being quite profitably mined in BC, over here on the left side of the page, these open pit development projects in BC rank extremely well from a gross in situ grade basis, as well as the kind of look through numbers when you apply recoveries and so forth. So we think from a benchmarking perspective, these projects are extremely well positioned. So the Berg deposit, we just picked it up at the end of last year. It's something that we haven't really initiated our first program on yet as operator, but we're excited to get in there this year. So as I mentioned at the top, drilling going on at West Seal is focused on upgrading resources there later this year. Berg shown here in cross section and plan view, already a very advanced deposit, large in scale, but there's some Very important high-grade features here, these sort of red pods that you see that go quite near to surface and exist sort of around the deposit. We want to get in there and infill some of those in expectation or hopes of expanding those zones or better understanding them. Burgett, also, probably one of the more exciting exploration targets. This one, drill confirmed over on the west side. This east side really never been drilled. It used to be covered by a glacier, 20, 30 years ago, which is now largely receded, exposing a big Goston over here. There's a big coincident copper and soil anomaly on this ridge, coincident with this big mag anomaly. So this is one of the more advanced drill targets that we're quite excited to get into this year. And I'll probably just end on this page. So this is, again, the big map of the district, and basically a description of what we are looking forward to deploying capital into over the next 18 to 24 months. So 3 buckets, the first being finishing off drilling West Seal, the second being the Berg high-grade zone extension drilling I just touched on, and then the third bucket being all of this generative exploration across this district. This kind of third level of the pyramid refers to Burgett, as I just talked about, and then all these undrilled IP anomalies in the vicinity of the Seal deposits, which, as I mentioned, that was a blind discovery years ago. There's a bunch of extensions to that haven't yet been drilled. And then beyond that, there's a whole bunch of gold showings in the region that are not quite drill ready, but we have prospecting crews out actively advancing those to get them in that state later this year. So definitely going to be one of the busiest periods for the company coming up in the next 18 to 24 months. I'm very excited about that. And I'll just pause here with a few photos taken. I was at site a couple weeks ago, so these are just a few pictures of the ZTEM survey going on, some access improvement upgrades on the way to the Berg deposit. You can see our camp nestled here in the sort of rolling topography here, and of course active drilling going on at West Seal itself. So apologies for running a bit over, Gwen, but I will pause there and hand it back to you.
Thanks so much. I'm just going to ask one question, one quick question before we move on. You mentioned that you're working with Imperial on geophysical surveys. That's an interesting, that was interesting to me. Can you describe that relationship, or what's how that came to be? Because that's a pretty interesting setup.
Yeah, look, I think Imperial have a few things going on in their business. Of course, they did a very big deal a few years ago to sell down 70% of their interest in their flagship operation at Red Chris to Newcrest. That was really I would characterize it as a delevering transaction. The proceeds of that went to debt reduction. So their business today is that 30% non-operating interest in Red Chris, and then they have these 2 care and maintenance mines. They've got a lot of sort of funding puzzles, I suppose, in their business between the growth that they're seeing at Red Chris and how they're going to affect the opportunities available to them at Huckleberry and Mount Polley. So as it relates to Huckleberry, as I said, they've disclosed that they're looking at the economics of restarting that. In our sort of normal course dialogue with them, we certainly hear from them that they share our vision that the exploration potential in this district is huge, and we think that they're definitely interested in continuing to surface that value. We approached them with the opportunity to piggyback on the survey that we were going to do anyways. Not part of it just being good neighbors, but also when you're collecting this sort of data, it's always best for the integrity of that data to do it all at once in one continuous data set, so that you don't introduce different artifacts associated with helicopters making turns at the wrong at artificial lines drawn on top of ore bodies, that sort of thing. So you want to capture as much of the area as possible. So there's obviously rules of engagement when you're doing that with neighboring firms, and we've ironed out all the details there. But it's really a spirit of collaboration with our neighbors.
Okay, well, that's a good starting point for sure, given the setup in the area. Thanks. I'm going to move on to Cam Timstra. Let's run through what's going on with Tarachi. You should
Yeah,
be
that sounds good, Gwen. So Tarachi Gold, one of the Inventa Capital group of companies, certainly a very young company. Its history really only dates back to about the spring of last year, when originally it was a shell called Cal Minerals. Then with the signing of the first of 2 option agreements, which now make up the Tarachi project that we have in Sonora, Mexico, as well as some fundraising. We raised about $9.5 million in August of last year, obviously with the help of Inventa Capital. And then at the end of last year, we put in our put together our management team there. Can you still see my screen okay? I just kind of jumped off.
Yep.
But
there we go.
Yeah, and so really we also put together our team that now makes up Tarachi Gold. Myself as CEO, my background is in mining engineering, particularly in the sort of development operation of tailings reprocessing facilities, which of course comes in handy given that in October of last year, we signed an LOI for our Magistral Mill and Tailings Project, and that is a tailings reprocessing facility that we have in Durango. We also now have Michael Connard as our chairman, who also joined in December of last year, and Lauren Warner as our VP of Exploration, who brings over 3 decades of experience exploring for gold around the world, particularly in the Americas. So we're certainly very fortunate to have such a strong team. So 2020 was really a foundation building year for the company. And I know you touched on a lot of this sort of earlier on in terms of the benefits of being part of a group like Inventa Capital. So the main benefit of that is really starting off companies with a strong foundation, and that's really what we were able to accomplish last year in 2020. But there's a lot of continuing benefits that companies like Tarachi Gold continue to receive as being part of the Inventa Capital group. Again, some of which you mentioned already, but really the 3 that stand out for me are the access to the capital markets that we have. Obviously, that came in handy last year when we raised about $9.5 million back in August, but also just having access to that network of investors through Inventa Capital and the success that they've had with other companies. And also sharing things like office space and human resources. As a small company, we have a market cap of about $20 million right now. We really wouldn't be able to afford hiring all sorts of full-time people to do IR and marketing and corporate development, corporate secretary and back office operations and things like that. But we're able to share a lot of those human resources with other companies in the Inventa Capital group and share office space. And that helps us keep down our G&A every year, as well as give us access to a broader range of skills and professionals. And really also the opportunities that come from being a part of a capital group like Inventa. Opportunities that for Tarachi Gold ended up resulting in the projects that we now have in Mexico in our Tarachi portfolio, including our Tarachi project and our Magistral project, using their network of professionals around the world and the people in Inventa, as well as also the other professionals in the other Inventa Capital group of companies. We can always share ideas and opportunities and really get exposure to projects and opportunities that we wouldn't otherwise have access to as a standalone company. And so really, kind of leading from there in terms of what projects we now have in Tarachi Gold. Right now we have 2 principal projects in our portfolio. The first one being our Tarachi project, which is our exciting exploration project that we have in Sonora, Mexico. We acquired this through the signing of 2 option agreements. So we have the option to earn a 100% interest in a land package that totals about 3,700 hectares. And all these mining concessions are located in the Sierra Madre Gold Belt in eastern Sonora, in what is really elephant country. I mean, we have neighbors like Alamos Gold and their Mulatos mine, where they're producing about 150,000 ounces a year, sort of near our southern package of concessions. And then up near northern package of concessions, we're close to Agnico Eagle's La India mine, where they're producing about, I think, 70 or 80,000 ounces a year, as well as they have a number of undeveloped deposits up there, including their Tarachi deposit, which is right next to some of our concessions that we're actively drilling on. And then the other project that we brought in, we just acquired Magistral earlier this year. This is what we believe is really a game-changing asset for the company, and the fact that we will actually be producing gold here next year and using the cash flow from this asset to self-fund our future exploration projects, including that Tarachi project going forward. Basically, our vision for Tarachi is to become a self-funding exploration project where we can keep our investors exposed to that blue sky potential of having highly prospective exploration projects, but limit their risk and downside with respect to limiting future shareholder dilution by being able to kind of self-fund our projects going forward. And just taking a closer look at Magistral, this is the one that we acquired earlier this year. This project came with 1,000 ton per day modern facility. This is a processing plant that is an agitated leach facility with a Merrill-Crowe recovery system, custom built to reprocess the tailings that we have access to that are right next to the plant. We estimate there's about 1.3 million tons of tailings here at a high grade of 2 grams per ton gold, so very much a high grade resource. Those are of course historic resource numbers, but since acquiring this in February, we've really hit the ground running. We've since commissioned a PEA to be completed by Senko Engineering. We've also since drilled out the tailings basin to provide all the sample material that we need to not only do that PEA, but also complete an updated 43-101 compliant resource estimate for that tailings material. And really what we want to do sort of going forward over the next 12 months with this asset is complete that PEA, which we should have sort of by the end of August this year. And then work towards the back half of the year of making any modifications that Senko might recommend for the actual flow sheet and the facility that we have. And then early next year, start commissioning the facility with the intention of producing around 15,000 ounces per year of gold once we reach full plant capacity. And that's really going to generate some pretty significant cash flow for a company of our size. Cash flow that we really believe is going to be able to fund a lot of drill holes down in Mexico, particularly on our Tarachi project. And we're really excited about what we're doing at Tarachi as well. Right now, we are currently drilling on our San Javier concession. This is up towards the north of our package of concessions. Last year, we did a small drill program there just towards the end of the year, where we intersected some pretty good material, sort of in the 5 to 10 gram per ton range, and what we believe is intrusive hosted breccia pipe system. Quite a large system there. There's been some historic drill holes there as well, up to sort of an ounce per ton. And right now what we're doing is targeting the deeper extents of those breccia pipe systems. Our drilling last year only hit sort of the first sort of 100 meters from surface. Right now we're targeting sort of down to the 300, 350 meter depth to see if this gold mineralization in the breccia pipe system is continuous at depth. And if we can start outlining some actual tonnage here on these breccia pipes, and also looking for additional pipes across our properties here. The other concession that we've been working on over the last sort of 6 to 8 months is our Hibali concession in the south. This is located about 5 or 6 kilometers west of Alamos Gold's Mulatos mine. In fact, the road to the mine crosses over our property. We had some excellent drill hole results from here last year, earlier this year, sorry, including about 6.9 grams per ton over 63 meters, which we believe is sort of controlled by a fault that's seen in the old underground mine there called the Dura. So right now we're just working on what we want to do in terms of the next steps and bringing the drills back to Hibali. So we really have 2 exciting concessions right now that we've been working on, and a number of other ones that we haven't even really touched yet. But we've been expanding our geology team down in Mexico, and we plan to do some more regional exploration on those properties later this year as well. Oh, sorry, I kind of jumped out of there. But really, Tarachi, in a nutshell, we want to, like I said, we want to keep our shareholders exposed to that blue sky potential of highly prospective exploration projects down in Mexico. We're very much gold focused down there in Mexico. And with bringing Magistral online sometime next year, we want to generate our own cash flow and use that to fund our future exploration and really limit shareholder dilution. So we've made some great partnerships down in Mexico. Of course, a lot of those have been made through Inventa Capital's network, and we're leveraging those and continuing to search for new projects in Mexico. Both other tailings resources that could potentially extend the life of the mine, of the Magistral project, but also other hard rock resources in the area. I mean, there's a lot of really interesting mining concessions in and around the Magistral tailings plant, where the ore originally came from that generated these tailings. Very high grade material. They closed down those mines in the 1960s, and there's really been no exploration that we know of completed since that time. So a lot of opportunities for us in Mexico, and we have a lot of exciting sort of milestones and news flow sort of down the pipeline over the next 6 months, both on the exploration side of things, as well as we move Magistral forward and march that towards production.
Cool. Thanks, Cam. I know, I feel like everyone wants to see this PEA, right? Because it's hard to understand what Magistral is going to be, other than it's going to, we're aiming for it to produce 15,000 ounces a year, right? Like that's sort of the only number that we can all hold on to. And I can't ask you to talk about what the PEA is going to say because it's not out yet. But I can maybe ask you to talk about your sort of your peer or the company that you're to some extent following in the steps of, which is Go Gold, right? And so do you want to talk a little bit about how how it worked for them in terms of valuation and process, so that, you know, I feel like that's the only way of asking you what Magistral might become or be worth without putting you offside, because you can't talk about that yet.
Sure. I mean, you know, with Tarachi Gold, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel here in terms of our business model. There are certainly people who have come before us. As you mentioned, you know, a particular note is Go Gold Resources, specifically their Parral tailings reprocessing project, and that project is located only about 100 kilometers north of Magistral. They've been successfully mining and reprocessing tailings to recover gold and silver there for a number of years now. They've been doing that very successfully. And just as we plan to leverage the cash flow from Magistral to fund our exploration on Tarachi, Go Gold has been leveraging their cash flow from Parral to fund their exploration efforts on Los Ricos. And I mean, I think their market cap today is probably, you know, 800 million plus, and ours is about 20 million plus at most. But, you know, like I said, we're not really trying to reinvent the wheel here. I think having our own cash flow and being able to self-fund exploration using Magistral and hopefully acquiring some additional tailings resource so we can continue doing that for a long time as well is really what's going to make us stand out compared to our you know, other junior exploration competitors in Mexico.
For sure. And I mean, you talk about self-funding exploration, but 15,000 ounces a year at a tailings reprocessing facility, so the mining costs shouldn't be particularly high. I mean, it seems like you know, $800 to $1,000 margin per ounce is a reasonable number, which suggests a, you know, 15 million free cash flow from that sort of operation. Like, that's, again, obviously this is very rough ballparking with only a few numbers, but that's a lot of exploration that you could fund.
We certainly plan on purchasing a lot of drill holes with that cash flow, and as you mentioned, you know, as it's a tailings reprocessing operation, a lot of the costs that go into a traditional gold mine, such as removal of waste, drilling and blasting, crushing and grinding, hauling, all those sorts of things, you know, those are largely sunk costs in a tailings reprocessing operation, especially for ours with our tailings adjacent to the mill. If you look at Parral, I think they truck their tailings at least 10 kilometers from where they mine them to where they heap leach them. You know, we do expect not only those sort of operating costs to be, you know, quite low, but also the environmental costs, because if you look at those operations in a typical mine, that's where you see the majority of the energy input and the majority of the carbon output as well. So not only do we hope to produce some low financial cost gold, but also some low environmental cost gold as well.
Cool. Well, I'm sure we're all very excited, you included, to see the PEA and peg some numbers a little bit more closely. I'm going to move along in the interest of time and take us to the story that nobody knows anything about. The baby of the group, obviously, is Vizsla.
Okay, well, maybe what I'll do, actually, it's kind of funny. So Craig mentioned that, you know, that we had started basically with a cobalt business, and Inventa and Vizsla were incorporated on the exact same day, actually. It was the day after we had sold Cobalt One. So there's you know, the origin story of both these companies are quite similar, and you know, Vizsla was something that was a small IPO back in 2018. Actually, there's all these kind of funny you know, dates around Vizsla, but you know, it was the day before I got married, basically, that we came to trade on Vizsla. We raised $800,000 and went off on our life and kind of put together a great team that included Craig and Simon and Stu on the board. And a little while later, we were introduced to Vizsla Silver's flagship project, the Panuco project. And, you know, through that, from that kind of $800,000 IPO, we've raised over the life of the company now for $114 million. And spent only under 30 million of that on everything that we've done here. I would say well under 30 million for everything that we've done here with, you know, drilling 75,000 meters at Panuco, having a couple of hundred people involved on the project in terms of a very large systematic exploration for the project, as well as option payments and general expenses. And I think what I'll do here is just show, maybe what I'll actually do is I'll start at the final slide and just go back. So the three main things that I think, you know, I want people to take away from this abridged production presentation is we have spectacular grades. We have a huge district that compares to the, you know, the famous very large districts in Mexico, and it's being systematically explored for the first time. And what sets us apart from many other companies and many other companies in our place is that we have a pathway to production that gives us kind of a multiplier effect, I would think. And again, we're well funded. We have over $85 million in the bank, 8 rigs going to 10 rigs. And what I think is important to take away from here is we'll kind of look at a couple of things here, but always important just to look at the scale here. The district basically fits over the island of Manhattan in New York. It's huge. If you fly into Vancouver and drive downtown, it's like driving up one of our veins here. London, Hong Kong, it's a very big district, but without reference, that's not all that important. What's important is how does it compare to other districts in Mexico? You can see stacks up to San Dimas, to Zacatecas, Fresnillo, Guanajuato, and Las Chispas. Now, right now we're focused on just the western portion of the district here. We have 6 drill rigs turning on the western portion of the district here at Napoleon and Tajitos, and that'll be the area of our initial resource. And why that's important is because there's some very, very high grades here and significant strike length here at Napoleon. We've drilled this now over just under a kilometer of the 3-kilometer total extent here of the vein. The average vein width is growing, but it's 4 meters wide, and the average grade is also likely to increase, and it's 440 right now. So just as a comp, on a GT basis, that compares very favorably to Silvercrest. And as you can see here, some of our most recent drilling to the south has really been quite impressive. So 2.26 meters at a kilo, 116 here, 11 meters at 428, great grades, and continuing to kind of expand the known area here. Grade gets better at depth, higher grade gold and silver, which is really encouraging, meaning that I think we have quite a significant depth extent here. So 950 meters in strike, 4 meters wide, 300 meters deep and growing, and at an average grade of close to half a kilo of silver. So this is an excellent first place for a resource. Again, that's only a small portion of the over 3 kilometers of strike of this vein here. Tajitos is another area that we're drilling towards a resource. It's a little bit smaller, but it's growing and has the potential to grow, into something very significant. So just under 600 meters in strike length, 250 meters in depth. Average grade's a little bit more narrow than Napoleon, but the average width is a little bit more narrow than Napoleon, but the grade is a little bit higher. So 3 meters average width and half a kilo average grade. So 2 areas here that are really quite encouraging in terms of pathway to resources. Something quickly just to touch on here about the EM work that we've been doing, which I think will unlock further exploration across the district. I think it's quite important. So the highest grade material that we saw at Napoleon is in this massive sulfide material. It's basically black here. It's really quite incredible. So this was sub-interval of just under a meter at 21 kilograms of silver equivalent. That was spectacular grade. 2.2 kilos of silver, 199 grams of gold, and high base metals here. And because of the nature of this material, it shows up with electromagnetic surveys, something that really rarely ever happens in epithermal fields in Mexico or really anywhere. So the ability now that we have to take this EM and electromagnetic surveys basically and go and fly the property is huge, because it's already shown us that there's a potential parallel structure here to Napoleon that we named after Napoleon's wife, Josephine. So we will be doing work on this here shortly. But I suspect that as we go across the district here, the potential to find not only new veins, but also the highest grade areas of the existing veins, will be unparalleled, and something that again, hasn't really, not something you typically apply to these types of districts, but because of the high grade nature of Panuco, we're able to do that. So that's great. Huge amount of upside here with our exploration. That's why, we're increasing the rig count to 10 rigs. We're expecting to do over 90,000 meters in 2021. We only just started at the end of 2019. So this is it's incredible how well the project's responding to this level of exploration. It's something you really only see in tier 1 projects. Just quickly to move on to that point of production here. It's likely that we're moving towards exercising the options here in the near future with Vizsla, and by doing so, we'll have a permitted operating 500 ton per day El Coco mill in our possession. This is something that we would likely expand, and the idea is to fill this, not only the development exploration gap here, where we can see ourselves re-rating multiple times to some of our comps, including Discovery Metals or Silvercrest, but as we progress and continue to prove up hundreds of millions of ounces of silver in the district here, as well as transition into a production story through our existing mill, the potential to be re-rated is quite significant. And with the existing mill that we have, looking at 6.1 million ounces of production per annum is something that we feel is quite attainable, and moving into the 10 to 12 million ounces of production in the coming years is something that we have on our goal list. So, I think right now, Vizsla is very well funded. We have an incredible district here with high grades, the potential to put together significant resources very rapidly. But we have a unique aspect in our production profile, the ability that we have to have a production profile that will allow us to, see an increase in share price and market cap. That's really quite unlike any other company project out there that I know of. So really quite excited about that. Again, this is a company that it's the oldest Inventa company, and one that I think is setting the path and the way for the rest of our group's companies. And I think the future is very bright for Vizsla. And I'll stop there in case there's any questions.
Thanks, Mike. Good stuff. I'm going to wrap it up pretty soon because we've been online here for almost an hour and a half. Mike, I just want to, you mentioned, you see potentially exercising the option there fairly soon. Take me through your thought process on what you need to see before you make that decision, how you tell that story, what timeline that sort of decision sets up, right? I think I asked this to try and paint a clearer picture of that unique side of the story, and give investors a way of knowing that that's happening.
Well, I think originally for us, it was kind of funny looking back. It was kind of on the it's something that we surpassed very quickly, but we needed to see the potential for 30 to 40 million ounces of silver. Right now, I can tell you we see the potential for a lot more than that, and you can do those mathematical equations. We put everything out there except for the specific gravity, essentially, in order to do those calculations on Napoleon and Tajitos. But what I think is, the reason why we would like, the reason why a company would want to exercise those options and have ownership, right away is because they see the potential for very significant resources there. And so that's why we would likely be doing that. And I'm not sure if I can give a specific timeline for that just yet, but it's something that we're working on, and I suspect we may see in the coming months here.
Do you think you would define a resource first, like in terms of just what order the market might see it happen in, or?
Well, I think that's the reason why we have really kind of pride ourselves in the level of disclosure that we do put out there on the average grades, average widths, the strike, and the dimensions. We're constantly updating the dimensions of Napoleon and Tajitos, and the reason for that is that it does give the investing public the ability to do kind of a back of envelope calculation on that, because the real you don't want to be as a company, you don't want to give guidance to something or put yourself into a position where you need to meet a date on a resource, but the exploration is going so well that you haven't defined the limits of the mineralization, and of course that's not something that we want to do. So we still haven't found the limits. We're not even close to finding the limits of Napoleon yet. It's completely open at depth. It's open for 3 kilometers on strike here. We don't want to force ourselves to have to kind of cut off early and put a resource out. So, regarding the timing of that, I think it's just, we can kind of see what happens in the next little while here.
Fair enough. Okay, last question, make it quick. You obviously just raised a huge amount of money. Was there any change in the shareholder registry that, you know, is interesting, notable, yeah, that you would comment on?
Yeah, our chairman wrote a fairly large check for that. He's put about $7 million of his own personal money into the company in the last few months here. So I think that's an important one to highlight. Of course, the only reason someone would do that at $2.50 a share is because they think the price is going a lot higher. We also, one of our major shareholders, Franklin Templeton, added to their position, which was excellent, and we invited a number of other very strong, I would say, kind of seasoned mining investors, institutions, to come into this this last round, and so the register continues to get better and better. And a number of really strong institutional groups are buying on market as well too.
I'm going to wrap it up there, everyone. We've been online for a while. I've had a chance to pester everyone with some questions. To the audience, thanks so much for tuning in. We appreciate your interest. And thanks everyone for participating. Hopefully it was interesting and helpful. And we'll catch up with you all again soon, I'm sure. All right, everyone. Thanks and bye-bye.
Thanks, John.
Thanks.